Every time I used to go to cruise, it's too bad. I'm like, it's recording, Carla.
It is?
How much for the recording when you get to that? Okay, let's cover a couple things real quick. One is, so you guys have next week's off for Easter. It's the Easter break.
Yep.
We have work too.
Yes.
That would be
Everything. Let's have a vacation.
From my
What's on the hall?
we set up a
A
vacation.
holiday.
Yeah.
Go on
So
holiday.
here's the thing.
I don't know what
She's gonna give you some reading, but the one thing that I wanted to just have her throw your guys' way is just some of the YouTube things with Robbie, because even when you're watching him, it really helps. So what would you suggest when it comes to YouTube?
YouTube? I suggest that you watch his questions and answer sessions to start. I mean, honestly, anything you watch is gonna be really good.
Most everything I've seen is
It's so
question and answer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's always.
And he's on the radio too on
yeah, he's
Sunday.
on the radio.
I've heard him a couple
Let
times.
my
Is there
people think.
is there any kind of like intro kind of talk that just is, if you're just listening to him
Let
in
me
early
look,
stages, it's a good one to.
let me look, I'll look for some specific
You can
ones
post it to the
and I'll
Facebook
post it to
page.
the Facebook page. But if you just wanna go on YouTube and just Robbie Zachariah, Robbie Zachariah's question and answers.
He's one of those guys.
Yeah, he has a
And
YouTube
I've gone
channel.
on his website, but
He's on the radio.
I thought if you
Yeah.
knew one, you know,
One that I,
that just like, yeah,
okay.
that you thought would be
Yeah,
great.
it's good.
There's no intro for Rob. You just jump right
You just jump in.
You just gotta jump in with him.
Well, and he kind of does, you know, he kind of introduces things as he's speaking.
Like I loved his introduction in the book. I
Yeah,
mean, I could listen to that kind of stuff all day.
yeah. Okay, I'll look for something.
So his you know, his stories, his examples, I would love that.
All you have to do is just
Yeah.
find Robbie and
And
you'll be happy, 'cause it's like you wanna write down every
I will
sentence.
be happy.
He's one of those
I watch
guys like
YouTube on TV,
every
so I'll be
sentence,
sitting in a little slice of heaven,
every sentence he
Like
says,
Robbie.
you're just like,
yeah.
taking notes, it sounds like.
John Lennox
He's gonna.
is gonna be here at UCSD April 13th.
From 7 to 9.
Yeah, no, UCSD.
Oh, you're John Lennox.
John Lennox is the science guy that you
oh,
read.
he's
Oh.
in the world most of us live in.
Yes.
Laughing,
Yeah,
reading,
yeah.
that's what
He's-
April 13th?
April 13th, Monday.
Mm.
At 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Are you going?
Well, it's our
It's our mentoring
it's our
group.
mentoring group, so
Oh.
I was gonna propose that we all go.
As part of the mentoring group.
We'll go with
He's
you.
laughing at me.
So,
And take all the kids.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
This is
I forgot
great.
about the kids.
Hey, John!
That's what her session is.
Oh, okay.
We'll be praying for you guys.
Yeah.
And John.
And John.
So,
So
You know-
Robbie's radio thing is on podcast,
there you go.
Yeah, he has podcasts.
but it's the radio. It's let my people think.
Yeah, let my people know.
Get as much as you can, guys, out of this thing, okay? Because what we're after is building a way of thinking. And that means that we, more than anything, we want to create hunger to learn.
We did not say Brian.
Hey, I'm
Doing
in brain
healing.
audio visual technician.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alistair McGrath.
Mhm.
Is that the one I'm thinking?
Yes, I believe that's him.
Scottish accent.
Alistair McGrath. I think he is the British guy. I can't.
Alistair's such a British name.
Alistair McGrath.
Jolly good.
I'm almost sure that's him. Anyway, he's really, really funny, and he always makes jokes. If it's not the same guy, I don't know why I can't think of the name right now. I just watched him last night. He's British, and he always makes jokes about, like, he hasn't let go of the fact that America's not a part of England. So yesterday he was saying,
Oh, how
you
funny.
know, and when you guys change your mind about this crazy rebellion of yours, we are more than willing to take it. He's always making those jokes to crack me up. He's really funny. He's also really, really good.
Okay, so just use the week to inundate yourself.
Yeah.
Always think in preparation. Then because we're gonna do we'll do apologetics the week after you get back, and then we might do one more session after that. Technically, it's over that week, and then we go right into the mountains. And we have Tracy and Natalie here at the end of the month on a Tuesday and Wednesday. We have Matt Wakefield, the youth pastor from Citadel, will be here in May. So you're gonna get crammed full of. You'll get pieces. You'll get like, hey, take a look at art. Get a taste. What do you think of it? Media, government. It won't be in depth on any of them. It'll be in depth, meaning in 3 hours, but not a whole 6-week series. Make sense?
Mhm.
One of the things that we're looking at doing is instead of shifting and making an 8-month school, do another 4-month school from September to January. We're still talking it through and do identical what we did here, and then do a 201 that is nothing but leadership principles next year the same time that we did this one. For anybody who's gone through the first one can go into that, where we get to go hardcore just straight into leadership and what you're building, what you're actually building. So but this kind of stuff is what prepares you for that.
Yeah.
The apologetic stuff prepares you for that. The thinking of identity prepares you for that. So do it thoroughly so that you're prepared to step it up in leading. Make sense?
Chapters for, not next week, but the week after, are 2, 4, and 8. I gave you an extra one since you have more time.
Since you have more time that you have off.
That is not a vacation, but a reading. Just kidding.
Okay? So Jill and Bray are going to come up and discuss the chapters with you guys right now, and then we're going to go into small groups. So let's get some good discussion going on.
What's that, to move right into the small groups, what are you thinking for?
I actually think a really good thing for the small groups is going to be talking about doubt. Okay, so one of the things that we want to do with the larger community, meaning the awakening as a movement, as a people, as a tribe, is begin to process through the humanity side, where they can see what life walking in the Spirit looks like with your humanity, not separate from it. And there is an interesting, there's an interesting process that we go through when we start to talk to each other about our humanity. Some of us will have a tendency to want to stay and talk about our humanity, but there'll be areas in our life that we might get stuck in it, which is our dysfunction, which is the flesh, dysfunction side, right? Not all humanity is dysfunctional, and a lot of times we think humanity and dysfunction are synonymous. It's not. Humanity is not a dirty word. It is. God designed us to be human, to have feelings, to be able to cry and laugh. So I think in small groups tonight, what I'd like to see you guys talk about is your doubts. I'd like you guys to be talking about the 3 types of doubts: doubts of your mind, doubts of your emotions, and doubts of your will. And it would be pretty sweet if you could come up with a situation that you experienced all 3 and talk about those and interact concerning that. Because sometimes just letting people know, yeah, I've had doubts in my emotions a lot lately on this. And it's even trying to mess with my doubt and my will, where I'm not even sure I want to do this anymore. As soon as you talk about that stuff, the doubt loses its power.
Mhm.
So
That's good.
Yep.
All right, I'm ready to break into small groups. So we got a short time to talk about the chapter 5 and 6. What was speaking to you guys specifically for Buddhism, Hinduism, and science?
What I found with a lot of like Buddhist people, because there's kind of a real spectrum of things that they believe in. I knew somebody at work who said she was a Buddhist, and she wasn't from the Far East, she was from Iowa, which that's kind of more east, but anyway.
That's hilarious.
I'm just not the Far East.
That's hilarious.
Sorry. I couldn't resist.
Oh,
Yeah,
But every time she had, every time she had a problem, she prayed to Jesus. I'm like, dang, she's the most Christian Buddhist I've ever seen. Was funny.
So she was Buddhist, not New Ager?
Well, she said she was Buddhist. I mean, that's what she proclaimed. But what exactly that I never really like. You know, like he was saying, we kind of have to ask people what exactly do you believe, because a lot of these, all of the systems he talked about have a lot of latitude.
Right,
And what people really
yeah, the whole spectrum,
believe. That's a big spectrum.
yeah.
I liked where at the very end broke it down to where it says the followers of the Hinduism and New Age long for relationship with and between, like that personal relationship with what they felt was God. So, because I've seen that in the relationship I've had with friends that are New Age, you can see that longing for. And what I like about New Age people is they are willing to go and do whatever they need to go and do whatever it looks like to find it.
Mhm.
And because they so long for that relationship.
So what's the answer in Christianity? I mean, how could you appeal to someone who really yearns for relationship? What could you say about?
Well, I mean, you can talk about the reality and the personal knowing of who God is, and the fact that instead of just being this, you know, whatever, it's this specific knowable entity, and you know, He's stepped into humanity in order to get to us, essentially.
Yeah, and he's 3 in 1. He's all about relationship. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many have personal experience with a Buddhist? Kelly? And Amy?
Christian Buddhist.
Okay. Christian Buddhist, okay.
A Near Eastern Christian.
From the
How about a Hindu? Hinduism.
But it was more New Age than actually.
And now New Age. A lot of New Age. And then the New Agers pull a lot of stuff from all of those. So it's not by coincidence that all three of these are packed together in the same chapter. So it's just something to take note of, especially in this area where this is a New Age community of all up and down the coast. You'll hit different pockets of it. You do the street fairs, if you're ever doing prophetic words, constantly hit New Age. So it's very important to study these things, because then we start get to know them personally, like where they're pulling from, what streams that they're tapping into, so we can start relating with them. Because if we have no ability to, in our mind, to relate with them, we're just so one-sided. We need to understand where they're coming from in their history. How did they get to where they're at? What caused them? What was the events that led to this belief system that they're in now? And you almost practice it with your own. How did you get to where you are here now? You know, so you have to you play it out in your own mind of how your own testimonies led you here. And now you have to realize they have a testimony, and then we need to start hearing them, listening to them. One of the biggest things in here is reminding me how I need to listen more to what people are saying, which is very crucial. And I just appreciate what this book is saying, because I've read a lot of other books, and they never say listen. You're the one that says, hey, listen, in the other books, and you don't want to hear their side of things. So.
I noticed too that as I read through the chapter, especially in chapter 5, but as I read through the chapter, so I was reading Hinduism, I was like, okay, the Buddhism, okay, but as I got through it, I just noticed as I was reading through, as I was reading, it felt like, my spirit felt like this, this cloying feeling as I was reading, which I'd never experienced reading about it before. But I just noticed, I didn't know if anyone else had had that experience. It felt like, as I read it, it was like my mind wanted to, or like my spirit wanted to do this, like, as I was just reading.
It repulsed you.
Yeah, and I'd never had that experience reading something like that before. Interesting. But,
Did anyone feel sad? Yeah, I felt sad when I was reading because there were certain parts like in Buddhism, and they've got these things like they're these steps, and they're trying to do all this stuff, and life is fraught with suffering and disappointment, and the cause of it is craving, which we get that, right? And to end that you must abandon craving, and they've got all these steps that you have to do, and it's all about doing all these steps, and it made me sad.
yeah.
Because we know it's not by doing, and I just thought, oh, if they only had Jesus, they would know that, and I felt that really throughout the whole thing, with the Hinduism, Buddhism, it's like we've got this answer to what they're longing for, like you said, relationship, and so.
Well, one of the things that, and I didn't even underline this part, but it says the gospel provides identity, both individual and communal, to the follower of Jesus Christ. It also stands in marked contrast to the total lack of identity provided by the Buddhist version of reincarnation. I mean, I don't think that any of the, Hinduism or New Age, there really is no identity. There's no relationship that's there. It's just like you're saying, they're doing all these things, but what for? What is really and the sad part about us as Christians is many of us believe that Jesus died on the cross for our sins and we'll benefit from that when we get to heaven. There is no part about the resurrection and the life which produces the relationship that we have here on earth with Jesus. So if we don't believe that, we can't bring that to the Buddhists, we can't bring that to the Hinduism or New Age. So it's kind of sad, like we don't even believe, we're like, kind of where they are.
The one thing about Christians that was striking was that they said that the devotion that Hindus had would, put Christians really to shame.
Yeah.
The amount of songs that they write,
With the worship.
the acts, the extreme things that they do. We could definitely.
But they're doing it for the purpose of when they reincarnate, so they don't come back as a
They're
rock,
doing it
right?
they're doing it out of religion, but for the sake of how much are you devoted? What is your heart about that?
Yeah.
Watching the Bollywood movies that I love because it brings me closer
Bollywood?
to India until I can live it. One of the things that shocked me in it was the songs they sing to Krishna, because I could have sworn it was a worship song we sing on Sunday. I mean, it's not just devotion out of they feel it from the heart. They feel connected to him and there's a relationship. Like it's so similar in the wording and the way that it was just very interesting.
Chad and I were watching too on, I don't know if it was YouTube or what, but he found something that showed Hindus like praying and, and then having this experience of like, it looks kind of like sometimes like what Christians experience like in a worship service where they had a certain name for it, but it's been a while since we saw it, so I don't remember, but it was like this feeling of like total just peace. And so it was, because it was Hindu, it had to be like a counterfeit, but definitely something was happening spiritually where they were having this feeling of you know, total just like peace and euphoria, and so it was interesting to see that.
Yeah.
And I mean, because it could have like, it looked like sometimes what we see in charismatic services. It looked very much the same, and they were having an experience. Like you couldn't deny that they were having an experience.
Right.
So that's why I guess the word is so important, because you can have a counterfeit experience that seems amazing and.
Well, listen to this part. It says, how do we understand and critique these religions and their New Age offshoots? We should consciously avoid the danger of assuming that religions have come down to us in terms of philosophical universals. The study of philosophical apologetics encourages such thinking, which, though very useful in addressing the logical contradictions inherent, for example, in much of atheistic thinking, can be somewhat misleading in understanding the beliefs and practices in ancient civilizations. These cannot always be analyzed in terms of purely logical parameters.
Yeah.
So this is where a lot of the apologetics that we've been talking about actually doesn't work. Because Eastern religions are not logically coherent. If you're talking to a New Ager, they believe totally contradictory things all at the same time. They talk about it in Hinduism, same as Buddhism, so right? And it's a very intuitive. They're very intuitive religions, meaning of what I feel that I understand and the experience that I've had and how it seems to me. Again, they don't come. He talks about how Hinduism and Buddhism do not come through creeds, they come through stories. And so this is where if you can learn to so as people who have the Holy Spirit and who move in the prophetic and move in the gifts of the Holy Spirit, that's where this is going to come in. Because a lot of these people will respond to an encounter with the power of God more than they will with a logical reasoning.
Yeah.
Because they will, you can get into these cycles of this that lead absolutely nowhere.
Yes.
Because
When
I say yes constantly.
Yeah.
Yes and yes. And
Yeah.
do that, yes,
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
just like, no.
Yeah, yeah. I've talked to people who it's just like we're agreeing on everything. I'm like, that's awesome, and then it's like this one thing, and it's like, whoa, wait,
And
what?
right back to the beginning.
Right back to the beginning.
Yeah.
And so it's just like it was never ending. So this is where, in Eastern religions, a lot of the logical apologetics that works really well when you're dealing with atheists and secular thinking will not work with New Age and Buddhism and Hinduism. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't know, because if you don't know and you end up in these rabbit trails and you don't know who's, you know what I'm saying, like then you're all confused, then you're down the rabbit hole just along with them. So the understanding that logical reasoning is because you're understanding that you're dealing with truth concepts. So when you're listening to somebody in the New Age, you're going and you can hear it and you're, oh my, that's logically incoherent. It doesn't make sense. It's not livable in the way that you're saying it. I have to just trust your experience of it. So I'm really just having to trust your experience, and then I'm trusting your experience by my experience. So really it's all subjective. And it goes just back down to what I think, right? So New Age is a religion that appeals to the desire for no accountability and no personal, you don't have to give account to anybody.
Build your own.
You just build your own, whatever works for you. It's intuitive.
Plays right into postmodernism, doesn't it?
But exactly.
Right.
New Age is the religion of postmodernism. Buddhism is a religion of atheism. So if you begin to see how certain things, why, because true pure Buddhism doesn't really deal with the afterlife or with the origin of life. It deals with, Buddha dealt mainly with a pathway to live life pragmatically, right? So how do you deal with these things that you're facing?
And go to nothingness.
And go to
Well, that
nothingness.
was very
And emptiness.
mind-opening for me because I always thought nirvana
Mhm.
was paradise.
Right.
You know, it's like from the 70s or 60s
Yeah.
and 80s, you only
That's
reach
New Age,
nirvana,
right?
right? It's extinction.
It's extinction.
It's not paradise, it's extinction.
It's-
you know what I mean? That's
right.
just, that blew my mind.
Right. That's why pure Buddhism is very depressing. Yeah.
Right?
It's what's the word I'm trying to think? Self. Yeah.
You can watch it happen if you watch ancient movies. You can see all of the influence of Buddhism happening in and just in how like things play out in the storyline. There's always this point, or almost always, but frequently this point of where things just go bad and the person just struggles through, and you can see that input from that mindset.
It's not like the
That takes
happily ever after
No.
mindset, it's the opposite. where
It's
just the
almost
struggle
like if you're more miserable, that's the
for
better.
better.
You're more holy because you're more miserable. You know.
Yes, and it's the same with atheism. So the atheists, they are very nihilistic in their view of life. It's like because there's nothing, they're okay with the raw depression of the nothing. It's like
It's just the here and now.
it's just the here and now, and we embrace it. It's like there's no hope.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, when I study it, I'm amazed at the philosophers that they follow. If you look at their lives, so many of them ended up committing suicide or just with these like lives, and I'm like, how can you wanna?
It's like celebrating hopelessness.
I can't like.
It's so weird.
That just makes absolutely no
Strong faith.
sense.
They have strong faith.
Yeah.
But so Buddhism, is the spirituality for the atheists, right? But New Age is for the postmodern because anything is. So New Age is able to conceive of nirvana as something happy because they're actually pulling from Christianity. They're pulling from different places to build these things together to present a truth that is both your own and appealing and whatever you make of it, So, yeah.
So what is the point for the Buddhist of doing the steps and worrying about cravings and if there's
It's the
nothing
avoidance of
after, if there's nothing after this, I would think you'd just be party hardy.
Can I answer?
That's-
You know what I mean?
Humanism.
I had one of my really close friends is Buddhist, and I had a long conversation with him today about all that. And so I think from somebody who is Buddhist, I can answer that because I asked him that today. Ugh. Well, it hurts, you know, and so
I could feel it. Take your time.
So he became Buddhist in 2008, and he's done better in life since he's been Buddhist. That's true. And he told me that because I was asking him some questions about it and how's his steps are going, you know, and whatever. And he's still trying to on the step of removing suffering, which is where you meditate a lot and it's like you self-focus to empty yourself of everything is the goal. And when you do that, you're removing, we can say in our terms, all evil, but they use different words and they say attachments and they're removing suffering and pain. So like we would do a sozo for that. They're removing those attachments, those things, okay? Anything that was bad, was painful experiences, they're removing these things. And the whole goal is to be empty, and once you're empty completely, that's achieving nirvana. And however, that process of removing the suffering takes years, and you go into Buddhism knowing it's going to take you years to empty yourself. And so you devote a lot of time and studying to that. And although Buddha was not a man, they call him the man who brought the Buddhist idea. Some people call him Buddha, but Buddha is a Buddha nature, Buddha idea. And so he was basically showing people how to do this, to have a better life. And so when he is going through this process, I asked him, well, when do you do nirvana? Because you've been doing this for 7 years. And he said, I feel like 90% there. And I was like, well, how do you know when you get there? And he said, from what the teachers tell me, you'll just know. And I said, well, what happens if you die before you reach nirvana? And he was just like, you will be reincarnated with the same amount of suffering that you left over from what you didn't achieve last time. And however, if you reach nirvana, that is salvation in a sense. And their salvation meaning you are not suffering anymore. You aren't worrying about these things that bothered you, as in the Sozo counseling session. And so you can live peacefully as an empty vessel because you're meant to be empty. And so when you're nirvana and you die, you have two choices, and one of your choices is that you can actually choose to be reincarnated, and you can as whatever you would like, or another human, but the goal of choosing that would mean you would be a teacher to teach other people to understand the Buddha nature in suffering. The other option is you can stay in a sense of non-existence. They don't say God because God is a concept. They say that like I think the book said, that dies with the person. And so instead of using the term God, there is an energy source, a thing, a God as we would know it, that loves us too. And the whole process of ending suffering is to be one with it. So you are empty, and that is God. When you are in nirvana, that is God. And you can feel him there because you have no more suffering. But the whole purpose of why you're here is that you were merely created by a wonderful accident. He didn't create you because that would be a selfish act of wanting something for a personal gain, and because that doesn't exist in the perfect nature of Buddha mind, that it was just kind of like it's a mix of like a strange evolutionary thought process, and meaning that he was happy that it happened and hopes you can achieve it to be one with him. But if not, you'll have forever to be reincarnated and try again and try again and try again. But so I asked him, what, have you seen demons before? And he said, yeah, sure. And I said, well, what's your take on demons? How does that fit? And he said, they're just beings that refuse to do like Buddha mind. And they, bother me, and they're scary, and that, and the other. But they don't bother me as much as I remove more and more suffering. And it's kind of like, okay. But then he personally does pull from Christianity a lot, and he believes Jesus, and says, like, yes, Jesus is the only way. And I'm like, well, why is Jesus the only way? And he said, because to him, Buddha mind is love. You achieve there, you understand love. It's peace and it's happiness and it's all these things, and that's what Jesus is to him too. So to him, it's all one and the same thing. So when he uses it interchangeably when he speaks, and it's stressful because we all know that doesn't correspond with anything in the scriptures. But what we got to past all that, I was just like, none of this is making sense. It was all contradictory, and I love him, so I'm not pointing those out. But I'm seeing this, and it's frustrating for me because you would just want to be like, no, this, and this, but it's not a reasoning. You can't mix a reason with an Eastern religion. They don't work. Yeah. Even though he's using that, but like you he can't understand that because that's not where it starts. And so it was more like, why did you choose Buddhism? Like, why did you have these experiences? How are these working? Because I was like, well, but Jesus said this, so if this doesn't match this, and he was like, all I know is what I've experienced. In my experience, I felt it in my bones, and that supersedes anything on doctrine. And I said, okay, what did you feel? What did you know? What did you see? And he said in 2008, he was going through AA because he was an alcoholic for a while. And they teach you how to meditate and pray. And it's like, I feel like it's Christian based as well. I'm pretty sure it is. And so he was doing that because he was actively trying to fix this. And so he was meditating by the Christian pathway as he teach him. And he had an experience with God, I would like to say. And he described it as the most happy, exciting time of his life. He was understanding. I mean, everything he was saying is I understood completely. And I said, how did you know that was Buddha? And he said, I didn't know it was Buddha, but I did know it was God. And so I went to find any information on God I could find, and I read everything, and I felt like it was all true. So that's the point that changed everything, was he had an experience with God, and he didn't know his name. And so he looked for him, and he asked people, and his friend he got in contact with was knew a Lama, and so he introduced him, and they became good friends because they're both nice people. And once they connected, it was like, okay, great, you can lead me to God because it leads to God. Do you know what I mean? And so he said, yes, this comes to God. And he was like, great, I need to get back there where I had it the other day. But actually, that was Nirvana, and he just had that. But that's actually not the Buddhist mindset, too. You know, you can't have both.
It seems kind of new age if he's like
Kind of
the
taking
Buddhist
everything.
and the Jesus, you know what I mean?
But it's like
That's good insight.
they still had experiences in Buddhism, which shouldn't really be the case if you experience nirvana after your suffering's gone. Because as he said, he still has some suffering, but it's very subtle when he does, is what he said. But which means he has it, but which means you can't experience God because you're not empty. Do you know what I mean? There's like, this doesn't work and this doesn't
Like, how
work.
is that? It's very
Yeah,
contradictory, yeah.
But in order to experience God, then you wouldn't be empty because you would have God in you.
But that's not their thought process.
Right.
Yeah. So I asked him, well, if the goal is to be empty because I was filled with something, why don't I just fill myself with good stuff? And he was like, well, it is good to be empty is the process. It is God to be empty. It is God to be selfless. There's your extreme point, and then there's the other extreme point. It's like there's selfishness and there's selflessness. But the selflessness is the definition here is that isn't translating. Is that they mean like hands off, like you are completely nothing. Like, and it's not you, there's no personality, it's just, that means no mundane Jill, no mundane Bray. It's just when you're empty and all of you is gone because that's selfish to have an identity. Once that's gone, then you have achieved Buddha state and then you're saved.
So this is the second thing that I had wanted to point out to you guys is, he says, as God's church, our final apologetic is a loving community of Christians that proclaims to the world that we are Christ's disciples. We need to identify with others as the Apostle Paul did. To the Brahminite, became like a Brahmin to win the Brahmins. To the Sudras, I became like a Sudra to win the Shudras. Indeed, many Hindus and Buddhists have given their lives to Christ not through philosophical arguments, but through the genuine love and friendship offered by their Christian friends. Over against the emphasis of yoga as merger with some indefinable reality, we can offer true relationship with the infinite God through Jesus Christ and exemplify it through our own enjoyment of that sacred bond. Sadly, we sometimes reject Christianity as mere asceticism with a Christian slant and thus reduce to personal devotion alone what it means to follow Christ. And this is so important. The strongest argument against the attraction of Eastern religions lies not merely in an individual pursuit of Christian holiness, but rather in the practice of a visible and demonstrable Christian community.
Yep.
So good.
And, you know, I I think that in the sphere of learning apologetics and learning how to think and what we believe and to think through these issues, we shouldn't forget that God is bigger than any box that we could ever put in. His mercy and His grace is bigger, and that we don't know what encounters, and it's like our job is to be the gospel first of all, and to speak the gospel second of all, and to know, right? So as we're knowing and we're being and we're speaking Jesus, to trust that I truly believe that everyone who is truly seeking will find. If people aren't truly seeking, they're but even in Christianity, some people are not truly seeking.
Yeah.
They're just seeking to cover or find something to, help them cover. It's like, but those who are truly seeking will find. And I believe that so Jesus says, I'm the only way to the Father, but on the way to Jesus, people find Him in many different places as they encounter Him in the lives of the people who know Him. And so, to me, when I encounter those things, they are painful. I have a friend who I've gone back and forth with over time, and I went to the edge I really went to the edge. What can I let go of in my Christian belief in order for him to be saved? Like, that's what I was thinking, because I just wanted him to be saved. So I'm like, what, how much wiggle room do we have here, God? Like, I pushed it as far as I could, because, and the more that I pushed it, the more that I realized there's certain things that you can't push. There's certain lines that God will not move. But the grace and the mercy of God and the love of God is so, we can't even begin to comprehend it, that it goes beyond what we could ever think. And so it just helped me to continue to love and pray for my friend, and to trust God, to trust His mercy is bigger than mine, and His grace is bigger than mine. And
and it's a process. Because I think that sometimes too, when we see that and we feel despairing when we see our friend and we're like, it's almost like this person's drowning and you're kind of going, how do I reach them? But I think the Lord wants us to know too that it's steps along the way. Like, I had a friend I worked with who was from India, so she was Hindu. And so I just felt free. We got together one Saturday to, talk to her, like, oh yeah, the Lord showed me this or told me that or whatever. And so then she starts telling me how, well, I went to the gym and this guy's like, do you know Jesus? And when I went to the grocery store, so she's telling me this, and she goes, I wish God talked to me like He talked to you. And I said, Raj, nobody ever asks me if I know Jesus. That is God talking to you. Get you across the threshold so you can keep going.
Right.
But sometimes it's like, and then my director is New Age because she was living a lifestyle. She grew up in the church, but she's living a lifestyle where she doesn't want anybody to tell her what she's doing is wrong. So, we can have this discussion. It's the same thing. It's like, yeah, we agree on this, we agree on this. We have these discussions, really exciting. And then we get to a certain point, and I'm just quiet because she's going this way, and I'm like, Lord, she knows. I believe at one point she may have prayed the prayer of salvation, but she's off right now. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to go there with you. I'm not going to argue with you. I love you, and we'll talk again.
Right. But for you to be fully present, not like back away, not
Oh,
okay,
yeah,
I'm not
not-
gonna be hanging
not-
out with you now.
I'm not
You're
close
fully
the
present
door.
and
I
fully
love-
loving.
I love you, but she kind of knows she's gone somewhere that as a Christian, I'm not going to go there with her, but I still love her.
Yeah.
And I feel like that at the end when he says that, that it's the demonstrable Christian community. It's the same guy who wrote the Trinity chapter, who wrote the Eastern religions, and it brings, when I read stuff like that, it always brings the challenge back to me, to how am I living out my Christianity? And the Jesus clearly said, they will know you are mine because of your love for one another. Not because of the signs and wonders, not because of the knowledge or the preaching or the anointing or the anything. He said, they will know you are mine because of your love for one another. And so I always go back to that. It's like, that is my prayer for the church, is that we really become that community of believers that the world needs to see, because that's the true gospel. That's where they will see if all of this that we believe is true, then it should manifest here. And when the world sees that, then our life is a challenge to their life. Because one of the things that I notice with Buddhism is like, it is because of the need for denial, or they don't have needs, but it's a need for denial, right? That process that they go through, in the end, it actually ends up separating them from community. And it's like there is a sense where they have friends and they love people, but they can't really love to the degree that there's a place where they can't go. And so it keeps them in a state of feeling lonely, in a state of feeling separate, in a state of, and so it is the draw of true holy community that compels them to ask, what is it about, because that's the thing. It's like what Buddhists are wanting is the avoidance of suffering. And so there's so many things when I study Buddhism and I study the teachings of Buddha, it's like there's so many things that I'm like, wow, that is really awesome stuff. But then you go back to the Bible and you see how Jesus talks about it. Right? And so the very things that they're wanting to deal with in this very drastic way, God has given us ways for us to live in a way that is conducive to us being happy and being at peace and living in kindness and living in these places where a lot of times Western Christianity does not demonstrate. We look like the world, hurried and anxious and proud and arrogant and hateful and all these things that it's just like we're not really living the message of Jesus, and so people get turned off.
So apologetics is for us.
Apologetics is for us.
Yeah.
I truly believe that apologetics is first for us.
I looked at wisdom in the Hebrew, and it's like it refers to like a tradesman, and in the way that they are able to separate good from bad. So it's like if we get who we are with the apologetics, which this thing just keeps telling me to dig deeper, ask the question, know who I am, know what I believe, not what I was told, and then it's like how much wisdom. It's like he just wants to give it to us, to where any of these religions, it's like no matter what they believe, God's going to give us the wisdom because of our walk, because we know the truth, to say, to be able to separate stuff. And that's what Ravi does. And then that whole thing with we don't battle, flesh and blood. It's that overlying picture. There's a darkness, there's a deception that these people are in. But it's how much do we know about ourselves? It's just like
That's really good.
That's good.
That's what that sums it up.
Yeah, it's interesting. Jesus' discussion with the two men on the road to Emmaus, although it was theological in context, he spoke of Moses, explained to them basically the prophets from Moses on. He explained to them the Torah and how it revealed him. And then the prophets on top of the Torah, right? So he's speaking to their intellect, and yet they said, "Did our hearts not burn within us?" Which means, have you ever had a discussion with someone that they might have won the discussion, but you knew they felt the presence? They might have continued to cut off. There was such a thick manifestation that Jesus is present in the conversation. They can't deny it.
Yeah.
Because there's a certainty in you that you're not required to win a conversation to introduce Jesus.
Wow.
Well, Robbie tells several stories because he always talks about that. He says that he was in a communist nation and he was having he was meeting with like top leaders in the government, and they were asking him these challenging questions and he was answering, and they were talking and they were getting nowhere. I mean, it was just going around and around. It was going nowhere. And at the end, you know, when it was time to be done, he just said, "Before we leave, can we pray? Can I pray for you? Can I pray for you?" And out of respect, they said yes. And he prayed, and the presence of God was so strong that when he left, and they stayed talking. And the next day, some of them came back to him and said, "We couldn't leave after you left. I don't know what happened, but we ended up believing what you said, and we have come to Jesus." And so it wasn't, I mean, the argument, you know, wasn't what, in the end, it was when the prayer was there and the presence was there that caused them to shift.
We're talking about a friend of ours. We have a babysitter license.
Your friend's never gonna be satisfied because he felt the presence of God.
July 15th or
Buddhism
16th.
will never, it'll deny him.
I guess we'll wait till he gets to Nirvana and see his decision, you know, because to him that's achieving that feeling that he had. So that's like getting there. And but if it's not gonna be satisfactory, yeah, maybe he'll change his mind or keep looking somewhere or whatever. Because the way he described it is Jesus and